how one of your games you're working on, War for Cybertron.
Oh, yes.
And I was blown away by your voice of Breakdown.
Oh, thank you.
So,
There's another character I play in that game, and no one spotted it yet. There's another Transformer I play. I actually voice match one of the original G1 Transformers, and it has no. That's funny. No. Think of the last character you would cast me as in Transformers. No. Think dumber. Grimlock. Grimlock. Yeah. For some reason, I got cast as Grimlock, and no one's figured it out yet. It's hilarious to me. It's not on anything anywhere, but now you guys are the first to know.
And one more over here.
Hi. I wanted to know if, like you said before in Digimon, that you had trouble with a role or trying to do one. Are there any other roles that you struggled with or made you reach your limits in your voice?
Yeah, I learned very quickly when I was in New York. They had a character they wanted me to play that was very extreme. He was the Galactic Emperor from a show called Photon. And they said, he's crazy, he's wild, do a wild, crazy voice, you know, something like this, you know? And I was like, well, sure, how long? He's like, oh, he's 15 minutes. Oh, okay, no problem. 2 hours later, as I'm picking my vocal cords up off the floor, I'm realizing I can't do that. I have to be able to do, if I'm going to audition with a voice or supply a voice, I have to be able to sustain it for at least 2 hours. So then later, the Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings game, Battle for Middle-earth 2, I believe it was, they wanted the Goblin Commander, who is basically, if you're playing the forces of Mordor, the Goblin Commander tells you how to play the game. So he's talking non-stop. And my audition was sort of like that. He was the Goblin Commander. And sure enough, I walked in, and the guys from EA said, okay, we love your audition, but can you really sustain that? And I said, I can give you 2 hours of that, and then you have to let me go home and rest. So we get it on the first or second take. Are you cool with that? They're like, we're cool, we like it, great, off we go. So you have to know your limits, and I learned my limit on that one.
Well, since we're talking about some of the roles that you've got, two of my favorites that you've done I want to talk about, and the first one is Alucard from Hellsing.
Yes.
This guy's a nut. Where did that come from, or are you really kind of evil inside?
Yeah, it's funny. I tend to play characters that, or I tend to get cast many times as characters that are, in a way, shameless. They're willing to go all the way to that place. And I've been told that some other actors are not willing to go to those places, which I find humorous because that's the most satisfying place to go. There's a certain amount of rage and gleeful rage that comes out of Alucard. It's not righteous at all. It's just, oh my God, it's going to be so much fun to rip your head off. That sort of that perverse joy that I go, yeah, why not indulge it in the studio? And so that's sort of where Alucard came from. And Taliesin had a hard time, the director, voice director, when he was trying to cast Alucard, because he could find guys with big, crazy, deep voices, but they didn't sound maniacal. And he could find sort of maniacal guys, but they were sort of squirrely and sort of Steve Buscemi-ish. He couldn't find a count. He couldn't find someone who was noble and wanted to rip your head off. And that's what I brought, because I said that the key to Alucard is that he's incredibly bored. He's a blue blood, he's nobility, he's surrounded by plebes, no one around him has any class, and all he wants is a playmate. He wants someone to give him a good fight, and no one can match him. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. So he's basically frustrated, limitless, powerful aristocracy. And that sort of royal mindset is something that I can get behind. And Talisin's like, yeah, okay, you play the crazy vampire dude.
Interpretation!
I can see him falling over when you do it. The other one that I've loved from you was because it's a show we did together, was Holland from Eureka 7.
Yes.
That seems to be the opposite of maniacal. So how is that for you in terms of, it's kind of a deep character?
Holland matches the sort of older brother archetype, which I play a lot. I'm not Speed Racer, I'm Racer X. And usually that archetype is someone who has seen a bit of the world and has some wisdom. And then this youngin comes along, and it's sort of their job to be the Obi-Wan Kenobi for that youngin. And so usually this character is very skilled. Certainly Racer X is a better driver than Speed, but Speed is sort of the heart of the show. And it was sort of the same thing in Eureka 7 when Holland showed up. I mean, he's the guy who can do the cutback drop turn and all this stuff. And so this young buck comes along. It's like, well, what's going on here? And so the fact that Holland has this, I don't want to say necessarily it's a wound, but he has experience. That's usually what the main character is lacking, is experience. And that's usually what this older brother figure does have, is experience. And so he's going to share his experience with the young character, so the young character will find their own way. And the other thing I love about Holland is not only does he have experience in terms of life and trying to find his way, he has experience in love, in relationships. He has a mature relationship with Talho. And that relationship has to be negotiated on mature terms, both emotionally, romantically, and sexually. And that sort of thing is just so satisfying, because usually it's like, oh, we kiss at the end as the sun goes down, and, you know, happily ever after. Well, that's great, but, you know, let's work out. How does one have a relationship on this spaceship where we're fighting a war together, and, you know, we're going to stay together? Like, we're fighting this as a team. You know, Holland can go away and Talho can take over command of the ship, or vice versa, and everything can still function because they're sort of a married couple running the ship. That's very appealing to me, because that sort of sophistication in emotional relationship doesn't always happen in animation.
Now I've got a couple, and then I'm going to take a couple more questions. There's a couple quotes I've heard from you. The first one came off the internet when I was researching all this, and it's talking about the importance of Shakespeare in terms of learning how to do this particular kind of job. And that seems to be a bit of a disconnect for some folks. You want to explain that a bit?
I think the reason why I talked about Shakespeare or any classical theater is that whether you're doing Shakespeare, Indian Bharatanatyam, Japanese No, or any sort of commedia dell'arte, Italian commedia dell'arte, there is a form that must be filled. There is technique that must be learned. Too often, people's notion of acting comes from film, which is not bad, but film is about no technique. Film is about being as natural and invisible on camera as possible, as transparent as possible. And the more technique you demonstrate on camera, the more fake you look. So technique doesn't always help you when you've got a camera that's far away from your face. But in the theater, you must have technique. You must have technique to handle your voice, to handle your body, to be able to perform every night, again and again and again. And so if you learn that technique is what is helpful when it comes to anime dubbing. Because as far as I'm concerned, dubbing animation to picture is the most technically demanding type of acting, short of musical theater and opera, where you basically have to juggle so many technical plates at once and still bring a believable performance to the table. So if you don't have what musicians call chops, if you don't have your technique down, you're going to be stumbling trying to just express something emotional. So you have Shakespeare, and being able to handle language like that sharpens your technique, so then you don't have to think about the technique when you're in the booth or when you're acting. You can just let the emotional reality or emotional believability of the moment flow without stressing about crossing your T's and dotting your I's.
The other quote